Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. I am Tony Lynch, and this is the number one podcast for bringing you guys conversations around death, dying, and grief, and we're normalizing it. We're bringing another amazing individual to you guys today to come and share her story about the work that she does. And before we get started, do me a favor. If this is your first time tuning in, head on over to their YouTube channel. There it is down below, running across there, the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. Help us to get the subscribers up there. Help us get the word out there and to reach more and more people. And, definitely appreciate you guys' support. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I would like to say that this is for educational purposes only. But if you know anyone who can benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. And then if you have any questions or comments that you would like to put in there, put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer those as we go along. Now, without further ado, I'm going to bring up my guest. You guys help me welcome Ruth to the show today. Ruth, how you doing? You're on mute. Yes.
Is it okay now?
Yep. You're good now. You're good. How you doing today?
I'm good. And you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yes. So now, before we get started, tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Okay. My name is Ruth Hephzibah, and I'm the founder of Grief2Grace International. So here at Grief2Grace, we're located at Texas in the United States. So here we do a lot. We try to help people move from being stuck to being unstuck and help them to find purpose in their pain. So irrespective of where you're at in your journey, we help you to get unstuck and move from grief to grace, basically. So it's a Christian platform, and we try as much as possible to see how we can help people move on and keep moving, because sometimes you can be stuck in grief if you're not careful. So we try to help people with using interventions and using all sorts that can help people, like using podcasts, using resources, using music, using all sorts that we try to use as much interventions as possible and tools to get people out of the state where they are and help them have a fresh start.
I love that. Now, before we get started, because I love your accent.
Thank you.
I think we talked about this before. Tell people about your accent. Where's the accent from?
Okay, I'm African. I'm originally from Nigeria.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's beautiful. And you got some dimples. See, I think we talked about this before. Some dimples that you have, man. I was like, man, that reminds me of my sister, because my sister has those deep embedded dimples and that smile that come along with it. Like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. Now,
Thank you.
How long have you been doing this work?
Okay, basically, for nonprofits, I've been in the nonprofit world for over 20 years. I started off with the protection of children, which is SPI, Special Initiative for Children Empowerment. But for grief related and cancer related, I got into it when I lost my husband in the year 2021. And at that point, it was shortly after COVID, and during the COVID, and just everything was not really like clear, and we didn't have as much resources as we could get to be able to navigate through grief. And it was really tough for me and my kids. My husband just passed from cancer and left me with 4 kids, and it was really very traumatic for me. And I didn't know how to navigate it. And being from Africa, most times you taught to just accept it the way it is and keep moving. And it was really a very tough journey for me. At some point in my life, I realized that I could almost not move on. So I was moving like up and down and not knowing what to do. So I got the inspiration from God then to set up a nonprofit for grief and teach people about grief. And so in 2022, April 2022, I set up a nonprofit, which was Echoes of Life. And it was together with, we had cancer and grief modeled up together. And we started off with that in 2022. So this year, 2024, I got a direct inspiration from God to separate the two nonprofits.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to keep Echoes of Life for cancer and related, and also because Echoes of Life is basically for cancer and caregivers, that and why we set up Grief to Grace. And since this year, we've been on Grief to Grace, and we've been talking, helping other people move on from grief and attain grace as much as we can.
I love that. I love the term from grief to grace because and um, there's people out here that don't know how to find grace within their grief.
Yeah,
I was just talking about this with someone else, because I think in our journeys as well, especially coming from a background where we don't get taught about these things, right?
yes,
We don't get taught about what grief is, and then when we are, there's a stigma that comes along with it, like it's supposed to be the sad thing,
that's it.
right? And it is. It's a very sad thing to lose someone that you care about, right?
Yes,
But I think where the confusion is that people never say that there's another side to that,
yeah.
and it's easy to get caught in that darkness, right?
Hmm.
Easy to get caught in that heavy mud that we're going through, trying to navigate it, and things like that. So I will pose this question to you: how does one begin the steps of navigating out of that darkness?
Okay, for everyone, it is different,
Hmm.
basically. But for me, when God gave us this inspiration, like I said, I was stuck in grief, like stuck. I thought I was progressing, but I wasn't. And God gave me the inspiration. At some point in my life, I went to the doctor and he told me that I had acute stress. And I'm like, how do I get out of this? And I realized that there were some processes I needed to do. Because all through what I knew was that we just had to go through the stages of grief,
Hmm.
the regular stages of grief, and it was not just working. And then I developed a model which worked for me. And that model is, the first one is you need to forgive. The first one is forgiveness and acceptance. So you just need to accept the situation as much as you can. Just know that yes, this thing, it has happened and it's happened. Now, what next? So when you're talking about acceptance, a lot of things happen. That's why we bring in forgiveness. And
Hmm.
one of those things that can help you to accept the situation most times is for you to forgive the situation. You need to forgive the people. You need to forgive everything that has happened in the process, because in the course of all these, we have denials, we have anger, we have all sorts, and we may not really understand why we're going up and down in those stuff because we have a part of us that have refused to accept the situation. We have a part of us that have refused to let go. We have a part of us that have refused to forgive. So if you don't forgive, for instance, I lost my spouse and I was very angry. Why did you go? Why did you leave 4 kids behind? Who is
Hmm.
going to take care of them? Why did cancer take him? Why did God allow it? There were just so many questions I was asking.
Hmm.
And those questions were really they were eating me up. And along the line, I also had people that came in and came out, that they were almost like taking advantage of the situation. I'll
Right.
put it in
Yes.
that way. Because most times when you are in such situations, you become vulnerable to everybody. And so I needed to forgive all these things. I needed to forgive the situations. I needed to forgive the process and know that now it is time to let go. So the next one is when you've done all that, then you need to be you. So you need to, after accepting that situation, you need to become who you originally are. And at that point, what I did was I realized that, okay, there was a root before Emmanuel.
Hmm.
There was a reason why Emmanuel actually married Ruth. There was Ruth before he became the breadwinner, right? There
Mhm.
was me. So I needed to discover myself again. I needed to know who I am and who I was, who I am presently, the potentials that I still have within me. And I needed to ignite it to be able to move on. So I started that process all over again because when grief came in, I lost myself. I lost everything that had to do with me. I lost my self esteem. It was like a crown has been taken off me. And
Mhm.
I didn't know what to do, how to navigate me. And I realized that I was going down in everything that I could do before. I realized that there was a lot of things I thought I could never do again by myself. And at that point, I now knew that, okay, I have to start. This is a learning curve all over again. I need to start learning. I need to learn how to do things by myself. I need to learn self confidence again. I need to build up my self esteem again. I need to build up those skills that I used to have, right? The inborn skills that I have, I need to start bringing them out again. I need to be roots again, right?
Yeah.
So I started doing all that. So that's what I always encourage people to do. So that stage is it. What how you go about it is you. It depends on you as an individual. So
Mhm.
you now decide, okay, because that's what I call fresh start, and that was how what gave birth to me being a fresh start coach. I started helping people, right, on
Mhm.
how to also go through that. So, it, so you now start moving on. Okay, like you are starting life all over again. You are trying to learn this process and be used. You set a goal for yourself. This is what it's not as easy as I'm saying it. No, but we take one day at a time, one day at a time, one moment at a time. There are days you don't want to stand up. There are days you don't want to do nothing. There are days you just need to take a break. When we say days, it may even be like months, but
Mhm.
just make sure that you show up for yourself. So after that, the last process for me in my model is um, becoming an idol, a change idol. So now you now start sharing. You share your story. You help people, other people, to now navigate grief or navigate the process also. So the more you share, the more you let people know what you've been through, the more you let people understand how far you've been in this journey, the more you get healed in the journey. So
Mhm.
that's one thing I have realized, and it's been helping me all the way. I use it for myself. I taught my kids, and they're using it, and they is working for them. So when they go out for any program, for excursions or whatever they go to, they ask them, "Do you have a story to share?" They share this grief story,
Mhm.
and it helps them to heal very fast. So that's
Okay.
yeah,
I love that. I love that because there was a lot right there. Um, Especially when we think about grief itself, right?
yeah,
Um, and one thing that I learned too is that the five stages of grief, it was how it was written, right? It was written for cancer patients,
yes,
not for those who was grieving the loss of those, but the grief of having a terminal illness.
yes,
And so when you can determine that aspect of it, right now, don't get me wrong, because the five stages of grief is great pillars.
mm-hmm,
They're great pillars, but you have to be able to dissect it, right? So when we go through them, it's like, hey, go back and add to that first stage. What are you feeling right now in that moment? Is it
what
the
do I
feeling of
it's
sorrow?
breaking up. So what do I feel how?
I said, how do you feel in those moments? Like if you begin to break down the five stages of grief,
Mm-hmm,
right? So say for instance, the first stage of grief. I would say
mm-hmm.
put that up there and then begin to add to it,
Okay.
right? To individualize what you're feeling
Yeah.
under that right there. Now,
Yeah.
although the five stages of grief doesn't follow any sort of pattern, right?
Yes.
Because you can be angry and
You can
denial
be
at
in
the same
anger, you
time,
can be, yeah.
right?
So most
So
times it looks like you're not progressing. So for
right,
you, most times you just feel, oh, today I'm in denial, tomorrow I'm in anger, next time I've accepted, So you keep moving around and it's like you're not progressing. So that was when I developed this particular model. And I
mm,
realized that it's working, and it's working for most people that are using it. And this model works, like, because all these other things that we're talking about are all embedded in it. Because for you to be able to let go, there are so many. When we talk about forgiveness, we are talking about the denial. We're talking about all this stuff. So you go
exactly,
through all these things. Oh, no, it never happened. So most times I feel that, okay, the first stage before we start talking about denying or not is to accept it. Because personally, for me, if I had accepted the situation when my husband was diagnosed of cancer, it would have been a different story. He was diagnosed of cancer, but I didn't accept it. I didn't believe that he was ever going to die. I didn't want to accept that report because I felt, okay, I'm a Christian. And if you know, most of us from Nigeria, we are very religious. We believe that anything can happen, healing must come. And till his death, I believe that there was going to be a miracle. Even with everything that I saw, I never saw him deteriorate in his health because in my mind eye, he was still the same Emmanuel I got married to 12 years ago. He
right.
was still that same person, and that is the same person that I know. But looking at the photos today, I'm like, was I blind? So he actually emaciated, he actually got to this stage in his life, you know, and that was those for like when you're talking about people that have like terminal illnesses, for instance, they also go through a lot of grief, especially when you now look at yourself, your past self and your present self. That was one of the things he never accepted. How can this, build, now being this? He never accepted it. And I remember then he used to always tell me, oh, look at me. I'm like, no, don't worry, you look good. Because I wasn't seeing what he was seeing.
Right.
So that's why I tell people most times, I say, whatever situation you are, if you get that doctor's note and the report and they tell you, oh, you have cancer, the first thing you need to do is to accept the situation. Because acceptance is what will bring healing. By the time
Mm,
you accept it, you'll be able to think straight. You'll be able to know what to do. You will not be anxious. There will be no anxiety. All those other things will be gone because you will now be able to have a plan. You have your plan B, your plan C's, You'll be able to plan with your family. You'll be able to do all sorts. In fairness to my late husband, he actually accepted his situation. But I didn't. I didn't. And I tried to sell my own what my own belief to him.
mm-hmm.
Oh, you need to accept, don't accept it. Don't accept this report. This is the devil's report. Don't accept it. It's the devil's. And for those reasons, I never planned his death. I never planned all those stuff. And when he passed, it was very difficult for us to be able to move on because we didn't plan. I remember then he was like, okay, let me get life insurance. I'm like, you mean you're going to die? You know? You mean you want to die? So you accepted this report? You think you're going to die? And he's like, no, it doesn't mean I'm going to die. It means that we are just accepting, we are planning. Anything can happen. And I refused it. Okay,
Mm,
he came up with other plans. Okay, the burial insurance and other stuff. Oh, they've sold all this to you? You mean you've already accepted this report? Because I never accepted it.
right.
And after all that, also, there were so many other stuff like, oh, let's pray. And the more we kept on trying to push him to do those prayers, the more anxiety sets in, because it's like maybe God is not answering.
Yes.
Maybe things are not working the way I want it. But the very moment he let go, he accepted the whole situation. He found peace, which I never found. And that was how he was able to transcend to the next area, place where he is right now. But now I'm grateful to God that he accepted, because he died in peace. He was able to pass in peace. He accepted, he was able to accept Christ properly. He was able to plan his journey, even though I was not ready to plan that journey with
Understood.
him. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's it. So that's why I say, when you go through, it doesn't go like the way I feel. There's a missing link most times with
Yes.
the 5 steps, because it doesn't go the way they say. Sometimes you may not have anger, you may not even be in all that, but you just see yourself going like back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you may never accept the situation, and you die from it. Because I always share this testimony with people how I passed. I died. When he died, I didn't accept it. And I kept on telling him, you must come back. And I remember that was like 3 nights before he was buried. And like 3 nights before his burial, I called my pastor's wife and I went to her. I said, come, mom, you need to agree with me that Emmanuel must come back. And she just, okay, don't worry, we agree. And as in my whole mind, I've already made up my mind that if he doesn't come back, I'm leaving. That night, I had an encounter. And in my, no, I wasn't sleeping. I was fully awake. And so, like trance or whatever, he appeared. And I'm like, whoa, you are here. He said, yes. And I'm like, you have to come back. He said, no, I'm not coming back because I'm happy where I am. Can't you see me? He was really looking good. He was the real person I knew, not the one that passed,
Mm-hmm.
that died from cancer. And I'm like, yes, you're looking good, but you look at every one of us. You need to be here. You've not completed your mission here. And he said, I'm not coming back. And I said, okay, if you're not coming back, I'm coming. He said, you want to come? I said, I want to come. He said, okay, come over. And immediately I held his hand. There was a demarcation that threw him very far to a bright side. And I was on this very dirty path. And we were never together. And I started shouting because I wanted to go with him. I
Yes.
couldn't go with him. And I looked back. I came back and I saw my body on the bed, and I couldn't enter my body. I was floating, like trying to come into my body. I couldn't go in. And I'm like, let me enter my body. I was screaming, shouting. Nobody heard me. I was just screaming and shouting, I want to enter my body. And somehow I just blacked out. The next thing I saw was I woke up. And my pastor came in and he was like, Ruth, you need to let go. And I told him, in fact, I have. You know, he didn't know what I went through. He didn't know the encounter. But that encounter changed my whole life forever,
Mm-hmm.
because I understood that I died in grief and I never made heaven. And I could not even be where he was, irrespective of the fact that I was trying to be with him. So that's why I always tell people, and I preach it, accept the situation so you can plan. Accept the situation so that you can move well, you can move forward. Even with those encounters I had, I still didn't accept the situation like fully. And it messed up my finances, it messed up my credit, it messed up my everything, my
Mm-hmm.
education, my health, everything was going down the drain. And when the last of it all was when my mental health was affected, and I was diagnosed of acute stress PTSD. I'm like, what? you know. So
Yes.
how do I go on with this? And I asked the doctor. He said, you just need to let go. And that was when the whole story changed for me. And I knew that, yes, I needed to let go. I needed to take care of these children. I needed to be alive for my community. I needed to set goals for myself because I'm not done with all that I've been doing. And I need to be able to be a change idol for other people. Yeah.
I want to ask a question because I know there's some situations where it's harder to accept, right? And
Yeah.
I'm only going to speak from my perspective.
Okay.
So, what I mean by that, like when I lost my son, when my son passed away, he was 8 years old.
Okay.
As a parent and as a father, as a man, um, I couldn't. There was no way that I could accept that. For the simple reason was that I don't have a reason why he passed away. So he
Yeah.
passed away from unknown causes. Um, and I had spent the time with my son teaching him to function in the world without me, right? Because that's what we're supposed to do with our children. We're supposed to teach them to be in the world without us because we're not going to live forever, right? And so I was constantly teaching my son things that he needed to know in this world to become a good person. What life had taught me was that all of those things that I thought was not a possibility anymore. So when my son passed away, no, I didn't want to accept that. It took me a while to accept that.
Yeah.
Um, and because shortly after that, I lost my mom too.
Oh.
So I'm looking at the loss of both my parents, my younger brother, and my son within a 10-year time difference.
Hmm.
And so for me, the acceptance part didn't come. I couldn't just accept that I was an orphan in the world anymore, right? Or that here's a really big phenomenon. Um, I had the part of life that I really had to accept that my bloodline had been wiped out.
Yeah.
Right? There's nobody else coming behind me.
Yeah.
I'm the last. I'm the last of my bloodline.
Hmm.
The only thing I could think was that how does life get around and play this cruel joke on me?
Hmm.
Like, no, this wasn't supposed to happen this way, right? But these are the things I used to tell myself. It's not supposed to happen this way. Like, I can understand my father passing away. I can't understand my younger brother. Definitely can't understand how my son passes away. And now it leaves me here.
Hmm.
So acceptance came a couple of years after, but acceptance didn't come until I had hit my version of rock bottom.
Yeah.
And my version of rock bottom was I had lost everything. I literally lost everything. I lost my job. I mean, not my job. I lost my company.
Hmm.
I lost my home. I lost my gym equipment.
Hmm.
I lost my place. And I lost me
Yeah.
during that process. I didn't know what I was supposed to do anymore. I had
That's
no
it.
path. I had no direction. I had no purpose. I had no reason to want to be here anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it took me getting to a place to where I wanted to take my life. And I found acceptance inside of that, or acknowledgement, right? Acknowledgement of the life that would never be, but also the possibility of a life that I could have through my grief. So I can contribute or attribute everything now um, through the worst pain I've ever gone through. And that's my acknowledgement or my acceptance. I want to get your thoughts on that. Because I know a lot of people don't find that, but of course, saying grief is my gift
Yeah.
as well. But what would you say to those who have where it feels like the timelines in life doesn't quite add up?
Yes, for those people, I'll use my story, you know, it's my own personal story because maybe it may make some sense.
Mm-hmm.
My husband passed April 10th. The mom passed same day in Nigeria
Mm-hmm.
from grief. And while I was like, oh, eh, the next morning, early hours of the next morning, I woke up because when I woke up, I'm like, I'm going to church. You know, I was just about going to take my shower so I could go to church. And I was told, do you know that mommy died? I'm like, mommy passed? What happened? She passed from grief. And I'm like, whoa. Few months later, that was on my husband's birthday, which is December 5th. I am released a song, a single for him. That was his first birthday in heaven. And I can remember vividly, I sent it to his father that morning. And he was like, whoa, you did good, you know, and sent me messages. I was like, this is great. You did for my son. And in the evening, I took my kids out, went to his resting place. On our way back, I was told the dad passed from grief. And it was really traumatic for me. Within the same period, we had a friend, a family friend who was really like very close to me and my kids. He passed. Then, within another space of maybe like 2, 3 months, another family friend, he passed. And I'm like, and all these people, you know, it was more, we couldn't really add it up because there's some of them like they were ill, like my husband, and you prayed all the prayers and it didn't just work. And I can remember vividly, the other day I was telling my son about praying for someone who was ill, and he said, forget it. God doesn't heal. So, as a Christian, it challenged my faith.
Yeah.
It challenged me as a mom. How can I bring up kids who don't believe in God? And I'm a minister of God, you know? So there
Mm-hmm.
were just so much. And I went back and I'm like, really? Do God heal? And I can remember also during those processes, especially when my husband passed and all this thing, my mother-in-law passed, the heat was really like very heavy on me because I was close to my mother-in-law. And the next moment, I remember there was a day I was reading the Bible. It was actually family Bible, and I was reading, and I heard that voice. You're still reading this book? And I dropped it. You know, you're still reading this book? I dropped it. I'm like, that's true. You know, that's what can happen. And I dropped that Bible that very day and I went to bed. That was grief. So you are not alone in whatever situation. When it doesn't add up, you're not alone in that situation.
Right.
But just know that everything has its time and season.
Mm-hmm.
It may not look like it may look like it's not adding up. But today, looking back, I don't have regrets. I talk now, I share my story with people, and I also know that if only I know what I know now, maybe I have done certain things differently. And I also know that God doesn't make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And there is one thing I learned in the process too, and I say it most times: you cannot die if you don't accept death. So I may be praying for your healing, and you may be praying for heaven. You may be saying, Lord, can you just take me and let me go? Who
Mm-hmm.
do you think God is going to answer? He's going to answer the person that desires it. Because God needs you more for his service there, you
Right.
know. And sometimes God looks beyond what we see. Sometimes he knows that if I don't take this person right now, he may be worse than what he is today.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it also looks more like a sacrifice. Like, okay, this person needs to just go for things to get better. So always see things differently. Sometimes you lose your job because it's not all about debt. Sometimes you lose that marriage, but if you look inward, there are things you could have done differently to save your marriage.
Right.
If you look inward, there are things you could have done differently to save your job. And also, if you look inward, there are things you could have done differently to prolong the life, maybe of the person that you are staying with that past. So there are just so many things. And so don't think that God is unfair. Don't think that God is not a just God. Things will certainly add up. You take care of yourself. Today, I look back and I'm always like, thank you, Jesus. He lived his life. There was one thing he used to say, and it touches me every time he used to say, I don't want to live a useless life. I want to live a life that touches men. And even if I die today, I don't want to live old that people will say, ah, to hell with that man. But I want to live a very short life that is impactful. And really, I tell you, my late husband lived an impactful life. You understand? It was painful initially with all these people that I said passed. But today, if I look back at the life and the legacies that they've left behind, I'm like, thank God I actually met this person. Thank God I was able to, my path crossed with these people. Thank
Yeah.
God they died the time they did and they did not have to suffer as much as they could have. You know, they are resting wherever they are. So there are just so many things. It may not really add up for you. Things may not be working for you, but life is a process. If you stand today and tell yourself that, yes, I'm going to start this process today. I want to move from level A to level G. And you cannot move from level A to level G without taking that step.
Right.
Begin to take that step gradually and just understand that these things don't add up, but with time, it's going to make sense. And in your pain, begin to find purpose. Because in every pain, like I say, I started Grief to Grace from what I suffered in the time of grief. And okay, I started, let me say, Echoes of Life from what I suffered in the time of grief. But
Right.
I started Grief to Grace to find more purpose from what I experienced in grief. So my experience in grief is what gave birth to Grief to Grace. Because when I was grieving, there were a number of persons and organizations that showed up somehow along the line. Those that will say, oh, today is your husband's anniversary, they send you gift cards. Those that send groceries. Those that do it's little things for you. It At that point it didn't make sense, but in the journey is making more sense. And today we're able to use it for the next level. So for you, that is not really adding up. Grief is not bad all the way. Grief will only be bad when you allow it to be complicated. So in your grief, you can make it good. You can find purpose in your grief. It can change your life forever. If you were that woman that or a man without purpose before the time, you can begin to find purpose. Like I said, before I met my late husband, I was a woman of purpose. When I met him in the journey, I was almost like dependent on him. And when he passed, he was the breadwinner. I almost couldn't live without him because he was everything. He was my
Right.
friend, he was my confidant, he was my bank, he was everything. You
Right.
know, he was everything. He was father, mother, and everything to every one of us. So or everyone around him. And I felt I could never live without him. But I forgot that I left myself behind when I
Right.
got married to him 12 years ago.
Right.
I left me I left me behind and I started following him. And I forgot to push my purpose. And when he passed, I rediscovered myself and I became me again. And today I'm grateful for whatever grief has brought, because today I have discovered who I was, who I am, and who I will be. I already know where I'm going.
Right.
And the kids today, they are better because they know they don't have a dad. So you just need to stand up. So everyone is beginning to understand that, okay, this is where we need to be. We need to find our purpose. We need to understand and find purpose in our pain. So for you watching right now, I don't know what you've lost. I don't know what you've suffered. Maybe it's your job. Just know that if it is your job, you lost a job because of anything, don't worry. You can still learn new skills today that will pay higher than what you've lost in the past. You can begin to do things differently. And who told you you must work for someone? You can get started with your own business and be that CEO and be the employer of labor. You need to challenge yourself. Okay, you lost a husband, maybe to divorce. Begin to see life differently. Yes, it has happened. Accept it. Now, begin to build yourself. Begin to build your confidence again. Begin to go to those gyms. Begin to study more.
Mm-hmm.
Begin to have a career path. Begin to have a business path. Begin to do things differently. Everyone must not be a coach. Everyone must not be somebody else. Begin to discover who you truly are without that person, without that situation, because that is who you are. There is nobody that is a failure. Everyone is successful. So grief can actually bring out the best in you. But if you fail to accept the situation, you will never move on from where you are to the next place. Because you want to be, most times I tell myself, I know that wherever Emmanuel is today, he wants me to be a better person.
Mm-hmm.
He wants me to be able to, when he looks down, he should say, yes, that's my wife. I knew it. Yes, you know what I mean?
Oh
So
yeah.
that is it. And there are a lot of people out there that feel, oh, she cannot survive without him. I need to be able to prove them wrong, that I can survive and be better. I lost everything, but I can get hundreds and thousands more than what I lost. So
Right.
that is what we need to understand. Things may not add up. No, that is life. Life is not fair. you know, things happen. A lot of things can happen along the way, but you can make things that do not seem fair to work in your favor.
Yes.
Then at the end of it all, you'll be so grateful, and to God and to yourself and to the community, to the society, and you'll be proud of who you have become. And you say,
Mm-hmm.
yes, thank God for this person that I am right now.
I got a question. You touched on some things, but I want to. How how did the kids begin to process the loss of their father? Because kids will process grief was totally different than we as adults, right?
Sure.
As we as adults, we take on a lot of responsibilities. From when that does happen, we still have to resume our parenthood,
Yes.
right? And in a lot of cases, like I do, there's some people who will push their grief off to the side to make sure that their children are taken care of. In turn, they become not so well,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's part of our nature is to make sure that others are taken care of before we take care of ourselves. Um, but there's a huge element when it comes down to children.
Yeah.
So that would be my question I would pose you. How did the children um, deal with the loss of their father?
Oh, kids process grief differently.
Right.
And one thing I've come to realize is that every milestone of their life, they begin to process it in a different way again.
Mm-hmm.
So the way they started with it may be different from the way they are right now. Okay, let me give you a scenario. Like when my late husband passed, I had a child who was barely 2 years old. He died. He was 1 year and 11 months when his dad passed. So at that point, I thought he already knew because from day one, I let him know that your dad is no more, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he knows that his dad is no more. He knows that, you know. But was it? That was 3 months or 4 months ago. 3 months ago, he just woke up one day. I just got in, and he's like, "Mom, my dad is dead." I'm like, you know, my dad died. I said, your dad died? He said, yes, my dad died yesterday. So that means he just reprocessed it again because he is fine. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I also have the other ones that the one that he's there, he is 10, he will be 10 next month. And recently I noticed he's so emotional. So sometimes he just comes around and he's like, oh, I miss my dad. And I'm like, okay, you know. So they process it like differently. But I know in the initial stage, it was really tough for every one of us, especially since I wasn't able to process mine properly. And every one of us, it was kind of tough for us. And the kids were now the ones standing up for me. They wanted their mom to be strong because they don't want their mom to die. They don't want to lose their mom. So
Yeah.
they were really like trying to be more protective. And when I realized that and I got myself back, I had to let them know that no, you need to stand up for you. You need to be strong for you, not for mom. Mom will always be fine. Mom will be good. We all need to process our grief differently. And at that point, I had to give them interventions and started talking to them. And I realized that they all had different stages of grief. Like my first son was really like complicated, but nobody knew. He was managing it because he wanted to stand up and be the dad took took the state and footstep of his father because when the dad was passing, he told him, "Take care of your mom and your siblings. Don't fail me." He was barely 11, and he took those words very seriously, and it was eating him up, trying to take charge of everything. His siblings, even against his wish. And I said, no, you cannot be a parent. You are a child and you must navigate grief as a child. And basically, when we started that process and we worked through it together for the first time, he cried and cried and cried. And I'm like, oh, really? He said, well, mom, you used to tell me, because I told him, I said, if you need to cry, cry. He said, but you used to tell me men don't cry. I said, not in grief. You know, because when you're grieving, cry. And he cried, and everything was almost resolved. And since then, he's been managing it and working with the same interventions that I give to them like every day. So kids manage it like it's really very complicated for grief for kids if you don't stand and move with them like very closely. You think everything is fine. Everything is not fine
Mm-hmm.
because they will cover it up, but they are not fine. They will cover it up, but they are not fine. Then most times, because even at that point that my son was like, oh, do you know that when that passed, I almost thought of committing suicide? I said, really? He said, but thank God for you. Thank God for God. Thank God for everyone. I knew I needed to stand up for the family. And I'm like, no, you didn't need to, but you didn't look like it. You know, everyone thought you were okay. He said, yes, because I needed to cover it up. Mom, I really felt it. So they cover these things up without us knowing.
Mm-hmm.
They have a way of not showing it. And that is why if you have such children, Because what I realized along the line is that not just because they lost their dad, there are a lot of kids out there that I talked to lately that are also grieving a lot of stuff like bullying and all sorts in school, identity issues, just so much they just go through and they grieve all these things. And you know what? Parents are not standing up for their kids and they don't even know that these kids are grieving. They don't know that their kids are struggling with these things because the kids come home and they pretend and play their games and do all sorts, and you think all is well because they're playing games, but they're covering up grief by playing those games. And at some point, I had, because there was one thing my son will always say, "Oh, Genshin saved my life." I'm like, Genshin? Because he was always playing games. And I
Mhm.
felt, oh, okay, they are fine with it. I didn't know they were using it to cover up. At some point, I had to cut down games, cut down a lot of stuff, and we all had to come together and live as a family. We had to start having more family times. We had to, knew I needed to stand up for them. So we had to start having more of family times, going out together, doing stuff together, and that is it. So kids, if we're not careful, they process it like very, very bad, but
Mhm.
they don't have a way to cover it up. So we need to look out. We need to ask them questions. We need to show them love. When you see your child angry, don't be angry. Ask the child, what's the problem? Are you grieving? Do you have something eating you up? Or maybe you see a child not eating. There's something wrong. You cook, you say, cook, everyone eat, he just picks, is picky. Take the child in. I do a lot of mommy time with my kids. I
Right.
take them in, come in, everybody have their own time. We have coffee time. I take them out for coffee, for dinner. Every child differently, weekly. Oh, this is your week. This is your week. They know. So we have time to talk. So you need to set out that time for your kids because it's very important. Those things are key because sometimes we don't even know what these children are going through. But if you don't get them to talk about it and they don't trust you enough to talk about it,
Mhm.
then there is a problem. So, like my kids, I try my best to make sure I tell them, okay, you just need to trust mommy all the time and tell me how it is. And they do. They do sometimes, and I make sure. Okay, yeah, you understand what I mean? They
Mhm.
do. You find it out when, oh, you don't. I don't want to talk about. No, don't worry. Then we go out. We take a walk. We go to the gym. We go to for dinner. We go have coffee. We go have ice cream. Okay, let's play games together. Even when I don't know how to. Do you want to teach me how to play this game? Why they're doing all those stuff? They get talking. It's very important.
Mhm. I got a question, because there's a lot to unpack there, but I think my biggest question would be because most people that I've talked to that don't understand grief, and then people that I've talked to um, in Africa, in the UK, in Italy or Germany, and things like that. There's some countries who actually teach and understand grief, right? And they will go, "You Westerners don't know how to grieve," right? And it took me a long time to process that. Like, what do you mean we don't know how to? What are you talking about? But then I began to do a lot more research through my own grief as well, and I realized at some point in my healing journey that grief wasn't never supposed to be something to look down on, but something to be celebrated.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that, and this is what I teach a lot of the men: celebrate the life that they had and the time and the life that you had with those individuals in order to carry that on in a way of saying thank you. And then the other side is getting people to understand that the grief that you are experiences or that are you are experiencing is the love that you is the price of the love that you carry or carried with you from that individual. And you can't have one without the other
Mm-hmm.
unless you can avoid people altogether.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you'll be able to do it. And I think that is a part of acceptance.
Yeah.
Because when you could break it down to that, especially for a lot of men,
Mm-hmm.
because most men will fight. We're born fighters. We're learning how to survive in this world. Um, and understanding grief is not one of the things that we use to survive in the world. It's either black and white. Keep it real simple, right? I have a
Yeah.
role, I have a job. My job and my role is to provide and to protect, to maintain value uh, in my life.
Yeah.
And if I can't show up in one of these three areas, then we begin to beat up ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a common practice um, in other countries to celebrate grief? And if so, how do we transfer that over to how we teach our youth?
Hmm. In other country, I will use Africa, for
Mhm,
instance, and specifically Nigeria. You know, it's kind of different. So I think there's something about the blacks. We just believe that people people should be able to just move on, just manage the whole situation.
mhm,
Okay, for instance, somebody passes and they tell you, don't worry, don't cry. Clean your face. Don't talk about it. Just keep moving. Really? And also, there are some culture in Africa where a lady, maybe a woman passes, loses the husband, for instance, and they accuse the woman of the death of the husband. It is a common practice in Africa. So the woman is not just going through the grief of losing the husband.
mhm.
And there is a lot of poverty too. Sometimes the woman is also going to go through the grief of no money, you know, of
Yes.
poverty. And sometimes one thing that is very common there also is that when the man passes, everything belongs to the man's family. So the woman is left with nothing. So the woman has to go through the grief of losing husband and all of the properties. You understand? So then now they tell you you are a woman, you shouldn't cry. Nobody should see it. Just clean your face. Keep moving. Continue doing what you're doing. It doesn't work like that. Then they lock you up most times in a room, a morning room, maybe for 40 days or whatever days, depending on the culture. And that woman is there and they expect that you'll be fine. Is it possible? That's not possible. So there are just so much that goes on in Africa, especially with widows and also like you talked about the men. For men, like I told you, my son already as young, as small as they are. My oldest is 15, the other one is my youngest is 5 now. They believe they are men. They shouldn't cry. They
Mm.
shouldn't cry. We shouldn't express grief. We shouldn't. When you tell them, "Oh, I think you're missing your," they say, "No, no, 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 I'm fine." But deep within them, they are. When you not get them talking, they burst out into tears and they keep talking. So I think things need to be done differently. And one of my mission, like I know in the nearest future, is to go back to Africa and change the narrative. Before I came to the United States, I used to work with children for the protection of children and their families. Then
Mhm,
I wasn't grieving, so I really didn't know much about it. But then I used to work with a lot of widows, a lot of single mothers, and
mhm,
majority of them were widows. And when they tell you their story that they've been through, and how most of them were had very wealthy husbands, and they were thrown out with the kids, and the family of the man takes everything, leaving the woman to suffer and take care of the family, the kids, and everything. So, okay, I'll answer that. So, Rachel, you said, do people in Africa that follow Christianity and Islam process grief that way? Yes, most of them do. I'm a Christian and I belong to the Christian part. But majority of them do. It's just like a cultural thing. Majority of them, especially those in the Eastern part, in fact, generally in Africa, it is common. Where I grew up in a community where you see these things happen, where women are thrown out because when they lose their husband. And this, you see people who were living in mansions have to come back to live with their parents. And these kids have to go to public schools or drop out of schools because of grief, because they lost the breadwinner. And they have to struggle through life. It is a common practice, I tell you. So these things are things that need to stop. Tony, there are just so much going on in the world. Like I told you, there are just some stuff because I'm African. People believe that, oh, Ruth is fine. you know, most people felt I was okay because I had to stand up for myself. But deep within me, I knew I wasn't okay. I'm here in the United States. My husband passed here, and now he came for a vacation for our wedding anniversary. He was diagnosed of cancer, and he passed. And I had just like my pastor and just a few people that really were there. But these people need to go back to work, right? And I remember after my husband passed, I had like some scenarios. Then now I laugh about it, but it wasn't funny. I drive when I drop my kids in school. I would drive round town, Houston town. I would drive round till it's 3:25 to go pick my kids because I didn't just want to be at home.
Right.
That was grief. you know, Sometimes I go to a parking lot, I cry, and I get into my car again. I don't even want my kids to see me cry. I needed them to see me as a strong woman so they don't break down. And I was not just crying because of all that. I was crying because there were just so much going on. I didn't know where anything was.
Mm.
I didn't know how to navigate anything. Bank accounts, nothing. So I'm going to start from the scratch. And I remember there was a time someone told me, oh, when Manuel died, we thought he was big. Now you're talking about this. And I'm like, does it look like I'm lying? I don't know where it is. You know,
Yeah.
just so much we don't want to talk about. But there are just a lot really going on. And I tell myself, if I had to go through this, even here in the United States, I can imagine those people out there that have nobody. I have like a friend who lost the husband here in the United States. I may not mention names. She lost her husband here. She's African. As I'm talking to you, the husband's family took over the property
Mm.
that this man built with his sweat. The inheritance these children have. The money that was in the account, they fought hard with everything they had. And somehow she just was able to navigate that. And though she lost some part of it, but she was able to recover some. But she was right here in the United States and was told that one of the properties, one of the houses the husband built was sold by the brother-in-law. This is reality we're talking about here.
Mm. Yeah.
These
Yeah.
things happen. So I'm wondering, and this lady has 4 children. three boys and a girl. And in Africa, we believe that the boys are the heir apparent of whatever you leave behind. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not as if the man died without a son. And those things still happened. So you can imagine if she had gone back, coming from a family like that, if she had gone back to Africa to bury the husband, because the man was buried here, then what they would have told her would have been that you killed your husband and make her swear, make her drink, because most times they bait the body, the dead man, and tell you to drink that water just to prove your innocence. That is how much people go through, most widows go through in Africa. And when they have to go through all those humiliations, at the end of the day, they tell you, oh, yes, you killed your husband. So for that, you're not going to have any inheritance. And most of these women are not standing up for themselves because the man is the breadwinner. The woman is just maybe doing like maybe trading or just working in some kind of office, not really like having all the money. It's the man that has everything. Or maybe they both struggle together to get these things together. And it's not working like that. So there's really a lot. When we're looking at things like this, there's a lot we need to do around the world. In the United States, it may be different, but in Africa, it is totally different. How we navigate grief in Africa, especially like for the men. I was speaking with one man from Africa. He's a man, and he was telling me how much people don't even believe that he's grieving. He
Mm.
lost his wife. They expect things to just keep moving. For the women, it's even easier. You find someone that will tell you how are you doing, right? Oh, how are the kids? How are you doing? How are you managing? He has to grieve alone. Because people don't believe that you're a man, you should be strong, you should be able to move on with life. And if you cannot, get married. But it goes
Mm.
beyond all that.
It does.
Yeah, it goes because we are
Yeah.
talking, like I tell people, we are talking about a human being here. That person was not a goat. That person, even if he was the worst person on earth, but you shared your life. And like you said, I believe in a memories, keeping memories alive.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that really touched me, I had a family friend that we always say, don't go to the resting place. I'm like, really? Why do you always go and see him? He's not there. I'm not going there because he's there, but this is the man I shared 12 good years of my life with. The
Right.
father of my 4 kids. He was not a wicked man. He was everything to the family, to his friends, to everyone. He showed up for his community. He showed
Mm.
up for the world. So why should I not go and appreciate this man? You're doing too much. Really? When every year I try my best, his birthday is coming December 5th. I'm going to release another single. I try to release like a single because he got me into music. He's one person that believed so much in me. I do a lot of speaking engagements, especially when he was alive. He gets me most of those slots. Oh, my wife, he believed in what I carry. He believes
Mm.
in anything I believed in, he supported it with everything he had. And do you know that every time I get to bring out a single for him, most of my songs I release them like on his birthday. And people are like, you are still thinking about him? Is he a goat? Was he not a human being? Is it not worth remembering? His legacies, do we need to forget them? So his children should not know how wonderful their dad was? Because most of them cannot really have very good memory of who their dad was.
Right.
They just know that, okay, this is my dad. I'm not sure my third son and my last son really knows who their dad was. And so I need to keep this memory alive. I need them to see him every day and understand and appreciate this man. But people don't understand it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So we must learn. I don't believe in putting pictures everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
because it may make everyone emotional, but because I may not want to do that because of the kids or something. But there are some legacies, like the songs. I know he loves music. I have to do that for him every year. It's something that I have told myself I'm going to do,
Mm-hmm.
and that may not be what you want to do. You may want to give back, like on the day the day he passed, which is April 10. That's the day we inaugurated Echoes of Life. So every April 10, we give back to the society. And I made it. I even a wrote a book, something, got my kids to sign more like a living will or something, that as long as they live, they must give back to the society on the 10th of April, which is the memorial of their father, because their dad was a philanthropist. He gives back to the society. Used to pay school fees for a lot of people. He used to give groceries to people. He used to pay people, like give them pocket money and all those stuff. There were a lot of people that were in his payroll. And that was what he believed in, charity. Even when he was trying to tell you, oh my God, I was born for charity. So if I do those things, people still question it. Why are you doing it? I'm doing it because I need to keep these memories alive for the memorial of these people. So,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to say is that when you're grieving, you must know that we are not saying stop grieving. We are not saying stop thinking about this person. We are not saying don't think about them. We are saying that you need to direct those negative energies into positivity. You need to start seeing things differently. What were those things this person or this whatever situation you lost,
Mm-hmm.
actually, how did it impact you? Then start seeing how you can turn that thing into something that is positive.
I love that. I love that. And now, with that being said, as we start to wrap this up and everything, tell people how they can find you.
Okay, yeah, people can find me on social media, Grief2Grace. Grief2Grace. And if you also go on Ruth Hephzibah on Facebook, you will find me there. If you send me a DM, I will always respond to it. Then I'm on YouTube, Grief2Grace. I'm on Instagram, grief_2_grace. I'm on TikTok. So you can find me on all of these platforms. And you can go to my website, which is www.grieve2graceinternational.org. So that's where you can meet me. Or you go to www.echoesoflife.org. You will meet me there.
Awesome, awesome. I love that. Especially, I want to get your podcast information as well. So I
Okay.
can, I'm collecting people's podcasts to put in the magazine so people know where to find you. But also, we talked about this before. A
Yeah,
lot
we
of other
did.
different opportunities to be able to showcase you as well.
Yeah, thank
Inside of there,
you.
any events that you have coming up, and everything. And Rachel, she's phenomenal. She's been with me. She's been helping me on a lot of those things right there. And she's going to be a force to be reckoned with. She's already a force to be reckoned with, and things like that. She's doing some amazing stuff. Um, so now, and with that being said, if you can leave the audience with something today, what would you leave them with?
If I need to what?
If you can leave the audience with some words, what would you leave them with?
Oh, okay. Just know that you're not alone in your grief. We are here to help you. So
Love
the
it.
more you share with people, the more you get healing. So don't keep your grief to yourself. Don't keep your thoughts to yourself. Know that whatever situation you're going through right now, a lot of other people have gone through them. And like I always tell people, the great men you see today, when you look at their stories, they have grief as part of their stories. And they were able to navigate grief, and that's what took them to the stage that they are today. And also, Tony, if you don't mind, I have a book and I can give away 3 ebooks for and maybe 1 copy to anyone that you choose. So my book is A Pen That Rewrites Grief. So if you're interested, you can just DM me or send me, you can talk to Tony, or you can send me an email at grief2grace now, that's NOW @gmail.com, and definitely you'll be able to reach me. So I will send you the ebook right away.
Guys, you guys heard that, right? She's giving out a couple of ebooks and a copy. Get your ebook, get your copy, man. Because you got to understand that grief is something that we can support you in those areas. And you have someone who has more resources for you guys and things like that. And she wants to make sure that you guys have what you need. Reach out to her or reach out to me. Let me know. I can reach out to her as well, or just connect you. So hopefully you guys wrote that down. Get that information. Reach out to her. Get your free ebook. Get your free copy. And tell her what you think. Tell her Tony sent you. Okay, and and do that for her. But also, with that being said, I want to say, Ruth, thank you for being on the show today. This has been amazing. I always enjoy speaking with you since the first time that we spoke. And again, there's that smile, there's those dimples as well. I love that.
Thank you.
You guys, our information is in the description of the on the YouTube channel. If this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. And this way that we can get more out there to more people to get those subscribers up there for me and everything. And for those who already have, thank you for subscribing. And if you know anyone who could benefit from the conversations that we have, please share this along with them. And with that being said, guys, thank my guests for being on today. I thank you guys for coming in. Thank you for your continued support. And we're going to see you guys in the next episode, okay? You guys enjoy the rest of your day. I'm going to see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.